Thank you for joining us today. My name is Sasha Parrish, and I am the project lead for culminating the top DEI insights from our founder and CEO, Pamela McIlvaine. On today's episode, Pam will be expanding on the importance of hiring our veterans. Let's dive right in. Pam, thank you for being here. Would you like to please introduce yourself?
Thank you so much, Sasha. It's always a pleasure to work with you. Once again, I'm Pam McIlvaine, the CEO of Diversity MBA Media and Diversity Learning Solutions, and of course, the newest author for my first book, The Skinny on Diversity Recruiting. It's a series of 7, and the second book will be out in March, The Skinny on Workplace Inclusion. So one of the things that we do and the insights that I actually will be sharing comes from the 17 years that we have been collecting data from our Inclusive Leadership Index for the best places to work. Thank you, Sasha.
Okay, let's dive right in. For our first question, why do we still have this tremendous gap with veterans returning to the civilian workforce after service?
You know, that's a powerful question, actually. And I'm sure there's so many answers that people could actually give to that one. But I'll kind of hone mine in as it relates to, veterans coming into corporate America and veterans coming into large organizations. Believe it or not, companies are still trying to understand what are the most transferable and useful skills that veterans offer actually coming off of duty of service. And we know that leadership is one of the most prolific ones that they have, as well as technical capabilities. So certain industries do better than others. But it really is a lack of education within our larger market. So there are agencies that are specifically designed to help veterans with this integration, but not having, simply not having the understanding and the depth of awareness that these are the transferable skills that are available. So we shouldn't be hiring veterans much different. There is that real bias there. They shouldn't be looked at differently than anyone else coming in from our civilian workforce. Instead, we should be looking at the special and unique skills that they bring.
Thank you, Pam. Our 2020 data shows that the continual advancement of veteran hiring. What do you think is contributing to these results?
Well, let me first just say that when my book was published, I actually published the most current data that we had in 2020. And because we collect insights every year, I get a fresh view every year. So since 2020, you're talking about, the trends as we see veterans coming more and more into the workplace. Part of that came from, can you hold on a minute? Can you pause this? Nelson, is that you? So, all right, let's just, so what was the question again before we start?
2020 shows the
the continual advancement of hiring of veterans. Okay, yeah, okay, I'll continue answering that. Okay, let's go ahead and start the recording back.
It started. I'll just cut that part out.
Okay, and so, hold on a minute, Nelson's wanting to say something. Oh, this is how much?
Yeah. And he's supposed to do the hot water line for the dishwasher.
Got it. Thank you.
I'm gonna let Chris know just in case you're busy.
Yeah, I'll be done. Okay. All right.
Okay. Do you want me to ask the question again?
Let's go. Start it back up.
Okay. 2020 shows the continual advancement of veteran hiring. What do you think is contributing to these results?
So that's a great question. And I know you're looking from my book, but just so that you know that every year, because we get our annual results, new insights every year, I can actually provide more information since 2020. So as I might have mentioned earlier in my book that the initiative for veterans hiring was one of the major movements that corporations looked at hiring veterans, the 100,000 veterans. Companies were making commitments to those left and right, which was great. And so there's this intention around the advancement of veterans within the workforce. Let's get them in, and this is outside of the typical technical industries or manufacturing uh, industries where veterans were being hired more so than others. So with this intention of hiring veterans, once they come into the workforce, it's important of organizations to ensure really good transition. And so companies establish mentoring programs, they establish buddy systems, they became better at learning and understanding the culture of these veterans coming into the workplace. So with that happening, the advancement, clearly creating a culture, helped be able to move veterans along. And the veteran resource groups, number one in being instrumental in helping the veterans, engage in the culture in the workplace. That's what's significant is really how employee resource groups work with talent acquisition and hiring managers and other groups to ensure that the veterans were acculturated and being able to move. So a lot of it has to do, why is because there's this marketplace initiative to advance and hire more veterans. And so all of a sudden, organizations across the nation said, hey, we want to do a better job. And so here, since 2020, we had like 91% in 20, despite the pandemic, 96% of companies in 2022 have strong veteran initiatives. And I will tell you, an average about 16% of veterans in the workforce that companies are tracking. So the veterans that don't necessarily, speak out are those with disabilities, and that's another, conversation. But yeah, I do continue to suspect to continue to see the trend in the advancement of veterans. I do see it as an initiative, a targeted recruiting initiative and advancement initiative that companies have, and that, as they determine this is the initiative they want, that's where you'll see more and more collective advancement.
Thank you, Pam. Companies are struggling with full disclosure with the veteran workforce related to those with invisible disabilities or mental health concerns. How can companies help veterans with these concerns feel more comfortable in the workforce?
That's really a good question too, because as I was just mentioning, disclosure, when you think about disclosure, self-identification of any group, but since we're talking about veterans, it's all about feeling psychologically safe and fully trusted within the culture that you work in. Organizations are talking about the norm of the behavioral norm of belonging, how people should feel, what that should look like, what that should feel like to belong in the culture versus just being included in it. So there's this entire cultural norms that are going on that now we're trying to figure out, why can't we get veterans with invisible disabilities, not just the physical, but the invisible disabilities as well, to be able to speak up and speak out about disclosing what their needs are. Well, unfortunately, I call it the hard truth now, and the very real reality, not no pun intended, but is that we still have these biases that exist among both employees as well as hiring managers, and in some cases some leaders, that veterans aren't comfortable. They're not comfortable enough with fully disclosing if they can function. They say, so why should I? What am I going to experience retaliation? Am I going to experience something now that's going to view my performance as not being, high performing? Am I going to hurt myself in sharing, why, that I am, have some level of invisible disability? And so with that, even though you have disability employee resource groups, able, working differently, that are trying to create more trust and safety in the culture by helping with awareness, it's still, very slow turn. It's very slow for folks to get comfortable. Organizations that have been successful may initiatives around campaign communication and messaging campaigns, that this is why we want you to fully disclose, because knowing who's in our workforce helps us be able to further develop and provide the resources and the tools to be a better contributing employee. So there's a whole, there's quite a bit that goes, with wanting to just self-identify. It's not doing it just to do it, but to do it because it's important for folks to know. When I think about some of the best practices companies, I always think about AT&T, who did launch prior to their merger a major campaign on self-awareness and full disclosure, and it was very successful. And it's important that organizations align their communication strategies with self-disclosure, and then training, tooling, providing resources to the managers. So if someone does disclose, does provide accommodations. And you know what's funny, what's amazing? One of the myths is that people with a disability needs accommodations. People that have a visible disability or an invisible disability need accommodation. But the reality is, a colleague shared with me, that's an expert in disabilities, that we all have to be able to identify what the essential functions are and be able to share and fully disclose what we need to perform our jobs very well. So I know I said a bunch, but a lot of that could say that you have to have a strategic messaging campaign for folks to fully disclose, for veterans to feel good and trusted to disclose that they have an invisible disability. You have to train the managers so there's no retaliation, so all biases are marginalized, and enhancing the awareness of what's going on. You have to be able to provide the tools to employees and safe places to have realistic conversations around, why it's important that we know who's in our workforce, because veterans are increasingly, being hired and do have certain nuances that we all can learn and benefit from. But basically, fundamentally, it's really having a trusted, safe environment where they can check the box and say, hey, I need this support to even be a better contributing employee.
Thank you, Pam, for talking about a topic today that some people shy away from. I know I definitely appreciated the insights into recruiting veterans. To our listeners, thank you for listening, and make sure to tune in next week as we go on to discuss how companies can be better allies to LGBT plus employees.
Thank you so much, Pamela A. McIlvaine.com, and order your book, Skinny on Diversity Recruiting. Thank you.